they have introduced this concept of frameworks. So like, how do you scale this, right? Because they had thousands of people. How do you scale product management? How do you teach people to become more basically stronger PMs sooner, right? There has to be a clear user, and there has to be a clear pain point. It's not about building a technology or building a solution like Web3 and AI. These are all, in my mind, means to an end. These are all technologies that are going to solve problems. At the end of the day, it's all about user and the pain point. That does not change. It doesn't matter whether you're building on AI or Web3.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey guys, I'm Sunil. I currently work at Circle. I'm the head of product for compliance and financial integrity. Circle is a USDC company. We have created the digital dollar that is the most compliant, most trusted, regulated digital dollar out there. My job is to make sure when this dollar shows up in people's wallets and when it starts moving around the ecosystem, it moves in a compliant manner. I've been at Circle for almost 2 years now. Before Circle, I spent a bunch of time at Meta, working in ads, working in privacy, did some big things back then, did a couple of startups before that. And I have been in and around startups for the last 10, 15 years, been in product management throughout as well. I love working with early stage founders. I love working with PMs. I actively coach people on the side, helping them grow up in their career, break into PM as a career. And I absolutely love product management as a role. And I find this very fulfilling, very satisfying kind of a job, because you feel like you're in control, but at the same time, you are serving the customers, and keeping the customers at the top of your mind all the time is probably the key to be successful in product management.
And we're live. Hey, Sunil, thank you so much for being here today. You've had a long and illustrious career, albeit today in Web3, worked for a long time in the Web2 world, built some amazing products, both from ground up with your own companies, and then worked with some of the largest companies in the world, building some fantastic products. So we're going to be discussing a lot of interesting insights around building products in the Web2 world, in the Web3 world. To start off with, it's been almost a decade and a half building products across different companies. And product management as a space itself has evolved over time, right? I would love to learn from your experience on what product management was like back in the day, how you've seen it evolve, and what are some points that you think might change, or where can people focus on in the next 2-3 years?
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here. So I started my PM career almost like 13, 14 years back. And back then, I was at a company called EMC, which is a big data storage company. I was on the software side of EMC called Documentum. And so product management in general has come a long way since then. So back then, it was more about, first of all, there's this concept of whole product. What does whole product mean? Whole product means you're all the way from solving a problem for a user to defining the solution to building it and taking the product to the market. It's not just leaving the product once you're done, but taking it to the customer, making sure the customer is using it, making sure you fix it from there, supporting the customer, pricing the product the right way. It's the whole product end to end. So back then, and I think this is what people are doing more so now. Back then, the role was not fully defined like this. There used to be a concept of inbound and outbound PMs. So inbound PMs would be working closely with the engineers, and outbound PMs would be closely working with the customers. So they were more focused on that. The role was more like a GTM, quasi marketing, quasi product. You still need to know what product you're building, what is the story that you're trying to build, the story that you can take to market, and things like that. But it was a slightly disconnected role, and it had its own set of issues. And secondly, even on the inbound PM side, internal PM side, execution, the role was you're not talking to the customers as much directly. And the role was more of prioritization, to say the least. Like, you have a number of ideas that you can go after. You have a number of enterprise customers or retail customers who are asking for things, and you need to figure out what you really build, right? So back in the days, there was not as much. There's this concept called customer validation or market validation, which is now a big deal. Lean startup basically made it a big deal. Back then, companies would build products in a silo before they take them to the customers. And there was also this idea about that I have to build the perfect product before I take it to the customers. Yeah. Now, things have changed drastically. I'm like, I don't want to build the perfect product. And these days, it's like before you write a single line of code, and this is exactly what I tell all my teams as well, Before you write a single line of code, you have to go talk to the customer, figure out the actual pain point. And we generally end up spending 70-80% of our time in figuring out the right hill to climb, the right problem to solve, and how we're going to solve it before we start solving it. Because execution is in hindsight, execution is the easy part. Because now you clearly know what you're building. But what you're building is the more difficult part, because you could build thing A versus thing B, and thing A could be a slam dunk or maybe not, right? So it's way more important to make sure you're finding the right problem to solve. So I think the now and also in the middle, last maybe 10, 15 years, when companies like Google and Facebook and others, as they're becoming big, they have introduced this concept of frameworks. So like, how do you scale this, right? Because they had thousands of people. How do you scale product management? How do you teach people to become more basically stronger PMs sooner, right? So they create this framework of these frameworks that are more structured in nature, where you can teach these frameworks and anyone can start to break the things apart, saying who's the user, what's the pain point, what are the various solutions, start to do trade-offs, and then you start building. So I think it has come a long way. It has its own set of pros and cons as well. But back then, it was slightly more ad hoc. Now it's way more structured, and more people are able to apply this and become good enough executing PMs these days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And I'd love to double click on some of these journeys for sure. Before I go deeper into some of these, you've had, a couple of stints in product management. Then you moved into your own startup, started building your own stuff. And going into the, like I'd say, getting your hands dirty from the 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Of course, even in the larger companies, you might have, picked up some of these projects. But, and then back to product management now, right? Were there some of these skills that you felt were transferable? And on the other hand, were there some unique challenges? Because lots of them listening in are people working at early stage product people, or they might be founders building this. So are there any skills that you think are really transferable? And what were some challenges you faced when you went and started off your own company?
So I believe as a PM, and I very strongly believe in this, I tell all my teams this as well, as a PM, clarity and communication is your job. Clarity about what you're building, clarity about what's the most important thing to do today, clarity about who's the customer, why are you doing this, right? Clarity about, at the lowest level, everyone should know, why are we here? Why is this important? Like there's this saying that, are people going to do the right thing when you are not in the room, right? How are they going to do the right thing? Why will they do the right thing? If they understand the mission, if they understand the core. If they're not fully aligned on the why, they will probably eventually give up. They will question, why are we doing this, right? And you can't be there all the time with them. So I think on the skill side, PM, I think in my mind, it doesn't matter, and it's happening today in Web3 as well. Even the Web3 is a new world. Doesn't matter what you're doing. PM is all about maybe 2 or 3 things in my mind. There has to be clear user, and there has to be clear pain point. It's not about building a technology or building a solution like Web3 and AI. These are all, in my mind, means to an end. These are all technologies that are going to solve problems. So as a PM, you have to be able to figure out who's the user. And those skills, like how do you communicate, how do you dig into it, how do you figure out the right pain points, how do you figure out which user has a bigger pain point, those skills are going to be same. Doesn't matter whether you're working at a big company or 0 to 1. And then there is this idea of, like at bigger companies, and I was stuck in this place as well. At bigger companies, you end up maintaining products much longer versus creating more 0 to 1. Because like I said, that if whole product doesn't go away. And the minute you have launched, and this is a problem that I see happening in the PM field today, that PMs just jump from products to products.
Correct.
Who is going to make sure the product sustains for the longest term, right? The product, you are able to maximize the output from the product. So if you're going to jump from building 0 to 1 or 1 to 100 kind of products, who's going to babysit the products once they're already done? So this is a common problem that's starting to show up in the field right now. But on the skill side, I think those are things I'll say. It's the job is about clarity. The job is about communication. The job is about listening. And those things are super, super important.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. One of the experiences that you've had that I'd love to go deeper on is definitely your experience at Meta. I think you've worked on some very interesting projects there. If I may ask, what was one that you really enjoyed working on, anecdotally, and why did that make it so special for you, right? Why does Meta? And I remember you mentioned to me backstage that it was one of your most memorable
Yes.
PMing experiences.
Yep.
So what really made it?
So I'll say this out loud. So Meta has been my best experience, and I think it's probably one of the best companies out there. I'll probably go back to Meta in a heartbeat, even today. And so Meta, I had number of really, really good experiences. I'll maybe talk about, before I talk about the product building experience, let me talk about the culture a bit. So let me start with this one story that I tell every single person. And I used to tell this story to people when I was interviewing them back in the days as well at Meta. So I joined Meta. So back then it was Facebook. I joined Facebook, and week one, my manager, he invited me to a product review. So we used to have these regular product reviews, design reviews, and all that, where PMs would bring in ideas, and they'll bring in challenges, they'll bring in trade-offs, and they will get feedback so they can decide which way to go forward. At the end of the day, the PMs were still deciding which way to go. They're only getting feedback. So no one was telling them whether it's a yes or no. So it was a permissionless culture. Like, I'm not going to give you the permission to do this.
Yeah.
You have to take the onus to decide if you're going to do this or not yourself.
Yeah.
I'll give you the feedback. I'll help you figure out the trade-offs. So I think it's way more important. It's what decisions you make is less important. How you made those decisions, what trade-offs you considered is way more important, because I trust you. You'll be able to give some grading. Oh, go to market, it'll take me 3 months. Oh, number of customers, whatever. You will come up with some rating. That's less important for me. What's way more important is, are you considering the right criteria? Are you considering the right trade-offs? Is there a privacy trade-off? Is there a legal trade-off? Is there a compliance trade-off? Is there a go-to-market risk? Is there a things like that, right? They are way more important. And then eventually you'll figure out what score you give them, right?
Yeah.
So week one, I sat in this product review, fly on the wall, just to hear how things work at Facebook. Super brand new, right? And so there was this team that was presenting an idea and I was in ads back then. Facebook was growing really fast around ads. A lot of our advertisers wanted to understand the effectiveness of ads. Like, are your ads really working? Are TV ads better than Facebook ads? We don't know how much time a user is spending looking at an ad because the user is scrolling, versus we know that the ad played on TV for 20 seconds or 30 seconds. Yeah. The person was sitting in front of us. So the team was presenting an idea about maybe thinking about, can we put a device in people's room under the TV, and the device is going to track when an ad comes. And at the same time, it'll start to record what's happening in front of the TV. Is there a person there? Is a dog there? Or there is no one there, right? Maybe you're taking a break when the ad comes. So it's to prove that are TV ads as effective, or are TV ads really being watched or not? So week one, the team was presenting this idea, and we used to have these reviews every week. Different teams will come in every week with different ideas, or different stages of their ideas or products they were working on. So week five, as I started attending these reviews just to listen in first couple of months as it's ramping up. So team five, same team, comes again, and this time they had a physical product in their hand. And I was blown away that we went from 4 weeks back. Exactly 4 weeks back, we were talking about this idea. In 4 weeks, you have gone from an idea to a working prototype. Nice. So, like, mind blowing for me. Like the biggest culture shock I had. And because I came from, before that, much I used to work at EMC, and I was thinking at some of these other companies, like, because we talk so much and we consider so many trade-offs because before we do anything, like, it would have taken us much longer just to decide if we should do this. And here, this team of 5 engineers spent 10 days in Taiwan in those 4 weeks, worked with a manufacturer, create the product, brought it back, and in we took the product to market, spent, I think, double digit, close to $200 million, kept the product, decommissioned the product in 9 months. So all in all, went from an idea to a product to decommissioning it, spending 90, which is a huge amount of money for an average company. But I think the biggest lesson I learned here was time is way more important than money.
Correct.
In this case, if let's say it had worked out, maybe something big would have happened. If it could disrupted an entire industry, right? Yeah. We did not work out for privacy reasons. It did not take off. And we did the right thing. We took it off the market, but we learned a lot. And the teams became much stronger. So what happens in some of these cases is when you launch a product, you're launching 2 things, in fact. You're launching a product, which is going to market, and you're launching a team that knows how to hustle, a team that knows how to work with each other, a team that builds strong relations with each other. Because the next time around, same team on a new product will be much easier to work because you've built that level of relationship, right? So that was one example. Um, then I think again talking about millions and billions, because at Facebook, this is the first culture shock everyone gets. Like no one at Facebook or Meta talks in small numbers. Our revenues are in billions, our users are in billions, our transactions are in hundreds of millions. So it's like you just get very, very quickly comfortable with talking in big numbers, right? So I still remember. So at the I was my second half at Facebook, and I was creating this product for measuring the effectiveness of ads. And I won't go into the details of the product, but that one product, we launched it, and we had one beta customer. That beta customer used it to measure the effectiveness of ads, and they increased their ad spend on Facebook. Ad spend is the amount of money you spend on ads on Facebook by almost $270 million just within the first 5 weeks of using the product. So this is the example I'm giving is like when you're talking about big numbers, those big numbers are really big in nature. Like these are things that you do not get exposed to at smaller companies.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think those were some of the big culture shock kind of moments for me, like how quickly things move. I'd love to talk about my other privacy experiences, which was again one of the best experience for me at Facebook.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing these. I'd like to go deeper into identifying opportunities, right? I think as product managers, and especially, some of these examples that you mentioned earlier, whether the product really translates into a success or failure, like you shared, doesn't really matter. But the execution, or even like you shared, right, time is probably way more important than money. So how do you not get stuck in these bureaucracy? And how do you zoom out and really identify what to build? Like you shared, sometimes that is way more important, and building the product or the execution becomes easier.
Right.
So whether it's a large company, whether it's a smaller company, whether today now it is with Web3 and its circle, how do you really go about identifying what is the opportunity that you should go behind?
Right. It's a very, very interesting question. So let me tell you. So this was, I think, my second half, and at Facebook, my first half was an okay half. I spent a bunch of time in ramping up, and so I had, I think, 9 engineers in the first half, and I used to manage 2 products, and I was super busy. I was like extremely busy. My calendar was packed, and then at the end of the first half. So Facebook goes in halves, like many tech companies are doing by H1, H2. So at the end of the half, my manager, he called me and he said, I know you're busy, but I want you to manage these 5 more products as well. So I was like, what the hell do I do now, right? I'm super crazy and I had young kids back then. I'm super crazy, 2 products, I'm going to manage 5 more. And then he asked me to build 2 more brand new products. So it was like it was one of those moments wherein I had to figure out a way to scale myself.
Yeah.
Because I just cannot do whatever I have been doing. What got me here is not going to take me there, right? So I had to figure out different ways of doing the same job. So I spent a good amount of time just thinking, internalizing, like, how do I scale? And I literally had to figure it out myself. I talked to some people, and so I had to find people who I could depend on. People I could depend on. I had to build alignment with their managers that I'm going to empower this person. I'm going to have them support me, and we have to give them the right amount of credit, and they are going to be working for me and things like that. But anyways, talking about finding opportunities, right? At the end of the day, it always comes down to, so this is like, before I go back into that. So now this was my second half, and I'm done building a bunch of things. I'm going into maintenance, and my manager is like, go figure out what do these engineers do. So that was a big culture shock. So I think that everyone faces that shock when you go from a junior PM to a senior PM to a even more senior PM, because at the senior level, you have to create opportunities. You have to find opportunities.
Yeah.
It has to come from you. Where it comes from, you look at the market, what's the gap, or you look at the customers and see what's the gap there, but you have to create the opportunities. So this was the first time when it was said to me saying, go find what job these engineers should do. So it was like the onus was on me as a person. I was a senior enough PM back then. Onus was on me to figure it out. In the previous companies, your managers told you what to do. Here, you had to tell the managers what you're going to do. So this is like a big culture shock or a big cultural difference. Here, accountability is getting built up from bottoms up versus someone telling you what to do. So if I am telling you that this is what I'm going to do, and if I fail, I have to take all the blame and the credit for it, right? If I'm successful, I cannot tell you I failed because you had asked me to do this and you hadn't done all the right amount of due diligence before you asked me to do this. It's on me, right? So this is like another way how Facebook makes people more accountable. Everything is bottoms up driven. Leadership at the top level, they will just figure out, they will just dictate which direction do we want to take this ship in. They're not going to tell us what exactly you should do. You are the people on the ground working with the customers, building products. You need to go figure out what problems do you solve. So I'll give you a recent example. So I run compliance and risk products at Facebook. Also risk around all financial integrity of the money moving in the ecosystem. Like, what is this money? How did this show up in the form of USDC? Where is it going to go? How far does it go? What are the legal obligations when money moves? They're like very, very different from other big tech companies. What are the legal obligations? How do you fulfill those obligations, right? So currently, what I do is, so we have a number of licenses at Circle. We have to fulfill the requirements of those licenses. That means when money is moving, we need to know everything about who is the person behind who's sending, who's the person behind who's receiving. We have to know what are the patterns in this money movement. We have to know the size of the money movement because we have to send more information when the money. So there are these few compliance-related laws around sanction screening. The money cannot go here, or making sure the money is not being sent for money laundering and whatnot, and making sure that when money moves above a certain amount, you know more about where did the money come from, right? So we have been doing this for ourselves, and over the last maybe 6-7 months, so now I'm at that stage wherein I have to create opportunity for my teams, because we have figured out the compliance requirements and compliance obligations, and we have done the right thing for Circle. Now I have this large team. The team has to do something else. So it's on me and my senior PMs to figure out the next set of opportunities. So you can start anywhere you want. You can start with looking at what you have done so far. What is the gap here? Where do you take this from here? Can you sell it to a new customer type? Can you add new features to it? Or maybe there is a complementary area. Let's say starting from there is aspects of KYC, KYB, know your transaction, know your business, and all that. From there you go into, now that you know these, you need to know how do you do the sanction screening. So there are complementary areas that you can go into. So the thing that we found out that I'm super, super excited for next half is, so as you're talking to a lot of customers, and fortunately for Circle today, we're in a place where we create this infrastructure, create this platform, a lot of companies are building on top of us. And they are building on top of us, and USDC is the currency that's moving through them, right? As an example, let's say there's an Uber, there's an Airbnb. The value exchange, medium of exchange is Uber, but the value exchange is digital dollar, right? So it has same set of requirements. When you move it, but now it's not my requirement. It's an infrastructure. It's your requirement. You are the one who is taking this product or the opportunity to the user, and there's money flow happening between you and the user. It's your responsibility to make sure the user is sending you the right money, user is not a bad actor, and things like that, right? So let's say Airbnb as an example, or Uber, driver and the rider. So we had to, as we talk to customers, but as more and more companies were talking to us, they're like, compliance has been a big anxiety thing for them. And they're like, so how do we now get the ecosystem comfortable? So what we did, we were like, we have done this. In this case, it was not a slam dunk kind of an opportunity, but it was to some extent obvious. That we knew we have done this for ourselves. We know we are not creating an infrastructure, and companies are going to build on top of the infrastructure. The obligation that we have for ourselves, tomorrow the same obligations will apply to them as well once they launch their products. What can we do to make the ecosystem easier? What can we do to make the ecosystem more compliant? So that's exactly what we're doing now. I'm launching 2 products before the end of next half, before the end of June next year. One all around when the money moves, is it moving in a compliant manner? Have we identified, are we finding money laundering, terrorist financing, drug trafficking, proliferation financing, and all those kind of patterns in the flow of money? Secondly, there's this aspect of travel rule, which says that when money moves above a certain threshold, you need to send a bunch of PII. Who do you send it to? There are aspects of non-custodial wallets. There are aspects of, is the receiver able to receive the PII? Right? So we have found these 2 opportunities, and then we are creating a lot of education and awareness kind of efforts as well to make the ecosystem more aware. So this is my personal goal as well, and this is what I'm trying to do this week while I'm here at IBW, is to demystify this compliance as much as possible, so people don't get scared of the word compliance. And secondly, I believe that compliance is one of those things which will make your product stronger. because you will do the right thing for the user because someone is holding you accountable to do the right thing, how you manage their money and the whole idea. So you have to go around, figure out what else can you do, and then at the end of the day, from there, it's back to square one, first principles. You have to make sure you understand the user really well, you understand the pain point really well. Even here, we're talking about these high level concepts, but what we build actually could be very different depending on what is the pain point the user has, maybe what's their data stack, how do they, what are their obligations based on the licenses they have, which markets are they in, where do we start growing, which markets are we growing in, things like that, right? So a lot of that depends on that.
Got it. Got it. So interesting points, I think here. One is definitely on the side that you moved from a very fast moving, exciting social network that brought people together. Lots of dopamine inducing experiments there. From there to an industry where you're now going deeper. Of course, some of the projects that you worked in were in privacy there, which brought you closer to the reg tech, regulation, compliance space, right? Which, in my opinion, is not the sexiest or the hottest of spaces, right? So my first question there was, can you demystify that bit for the builder and the people who are interested in building careers there, or early stage founders who want to start looking at this? And the second one is on the point that you mentioned that, if there are product managers from larger companies listening into this, right? People from, the Flipkarts of the world here in India, to the Grabs, Gojeks of Southeast Asia, to the Ubers, Airbnbs of the other, the companies in the West. My question there would be, why should they get excited about USDC in general, right? Because they currently have mechanisms, they have wallets already attached, they have some amount of, consider the US dollar moving through their payment infrastructure, right? They are able to transact today. Why should they even look at USDC or the infrastructure or the services or the two projects that you mentioned around, money laundering or, solving for those that you've been working on? Why should they really get excited about, or what should they look into if they were to start exploring this from both angles?
Okay, it's a long question.
It's a long question. Maybe we'll break it up.
Yeah, we'll break it up. Yeah. So let me start with the first one. So I'll be very transparent. So when I came into Circle, compliance as a word, it's a very loaded word. It's a very heavy word, and it's a lot of unknowns. Because someone somewhere has to interpret the law, someone has to write a policy. So let me explain the meaning of the word compliance. What does compliance really mean, right? So there are regulators or standard-setting bodies who will define the regulation, right? They will create. Eventually, the law comes out. Let's say a stablecoin bill is in the Congress right now. So a law comes out. Someone has to now interpret that law. Like, what is the meaning of this law to me, depending on what my business model is, who am I serving, and things like that. That law then turns into a policy. What policies are you going to follow? And the policy says there are policy standards and procedures. They will say, this is what we are going to do. This is how we are going to do it. Right. So then compliance becomes more about, you said, you hired legal, you interpreted the law, and you said, this is what it means to us. And based on this is what we're going to do. And you then hold yourself accountable to that. So no one outside is going to come and hold you accountable to the law. They will come and hold you accountable to your interpretation of the law. Your interpretation could have been wrong in the first place.
Sure.
Then you'll get penalized there. That why did you hire bad lawyers, right? But at the end of the day, that is the meaning of the word compliance. Like complying to how you interpret the law and what your policies are. And is it defensible? Does it make sense? Like you had a process, the process itself was wrong, but you followed the process to the core. That means you did the right thing. So that is the meaning of the word compliance. And because it involves regulators, it involves reporting, it involves law, it leads to people having anxiety, right? Because I don't know, what if I made a mistake? You will get fined, you have to close your business. And what can I do to not have to worry about the law, right? Maybe like one thing that we are seeing today, non-custodial wallets, the legal requirements are not clear. Maybe let me just go operate there, right? Instead of building something custodial and getting licenses or doing the right thing, playing the long game, let me play this game, right? Because I think this thing is cleaner. I won't have to hire the lawyers and things like that. So I'm seeing more and more of this happening versus people proactively doing the hard thing. And in early days, you don't have the resources to do the hard thing either, right? You don't have a user, you don't have a product, you don't have a product market fit. What are you trying to be complying to, right? So I think this is where my advice will be. Sure, you can build the product, build enough critical mass, and you can always catch up. But because if you're small, no one cares because you can only create so much damage to the ecosystem, right? But once you start to become big, you cannot bypass compliance.
True.
A USDC or anything currency related in this space, it's moving back. Same activity, same risk, same regulation. You cannot get away from that. At the end of the day, just because you have brought money on chain, doesn't mean it has become less valuable or more valuable. People are still able to achieve the same outcome. It's more about, are you able to use it for the same purposes the way you use fiat today, right? It will eventually be regulated. So I think my advice will be just get comfortable with the idea. Instead of pushing it away, try to embrace it, right? And then see what is the meaning of it. And like I said before, it is hard. It's definitely hard to understand, hard to build systems and controls around. But if you do it the right way, you will win eventually. Your users will be happier. You will create more trust and transparency with your users. Your business will go a long way because you're doing the things the right way. You won't have to cut corners. So I think that's my advice around how do you treat compliance in general as new PMs. Lastly, you talked about USDC and why should they care about USDC, right? So today, and this is how I proudly put my job today. My job is we have these pillars inside of Circle. The pillars are about issuing this USDC on different chains, flexibly, frictionlessly moving this around between chains. We have created this wallet infrastructure where now we have given a way to companies, bunch of Web2 companies, large ones like Grab and Mercado Libre and Nubank who are creating hundreds of millions of wallets. We've given them a way to create wallets at scale. Then there is this concept of, you know how to issue this digital dollar. You know where this is going to sit eventually. And now how do you also need to access it. Accessibility is another thing, or liquidity. Do you have the dollar when you need it? You are sitting in India, you want to get access to dollar. What is the process to get that? First, you convert your rupee to a dollar, then you send the dollar to someone, then they give you the USDC in return, right? It's a long process. So how do I make sure that this dollar is available when you need it, where you need it, the concept of liquidity. And then there is my pillar that's all about, now that we created it, we made it available, you're able to get access to it, it's sitting in a wallet, it's going to move. It's not going to just sit there idle, right? This is the whole idea, it's going to move. When it moves, we have to make sure it moves to the right places for the right purposes. And that's my area, all about compliance. So Circle as a company, I think we probably are one of the best and the biggest centralized, decentralized companies. Our mindset is all regulated mindset. We try to follow the law. Where the law is not clear, we try to take a risk-based approach to see what would a company doing the right thing would do in these scenarios, right? What kind of corners would they not try to cut, right? So we try to do it that way. And wherever the law is clear, we try to, and again, it comes down to law converting into policy. Are we abiding by our policy or not, right? So USDC today is the most trusted, most regulated, most transparent, frictionless flowing dollar coin on chain. This is why you should care about USDC. So if you're building an economy on top of in the decentralized world, USDC will make it easier for you to move it around and to unlock the use cases of the problems that you're trying to solve.
We've spoken a little bit about, building products at large tech companies. You've shared a bunch of interesting examples. I'd love to go deeper into what you're building today, and especially building products in the Web3 space. How has your experience been, especially, building in the Web2 world for the longest period?
Sure.
Over the last couple of months, couple of years, now going deeper into building regulatory products and building in general, I think interacting with so many builders in this space. How has product management really changed in the Web3 space?
Sure. Yeah, so I think maybe before we go into what has changed, let's define what is product management, right? Product management is all about a user, a pain point, and a solution, and taking that solution to the user, right? So as a PM, let me say two things. As a PM, my job is to remove all friction between the product and the user. Like, how do I get my product? So this is the job of a PM. Second, also as a PM, I very strongly believe in this. One of my early managers had told me this, and I believe in this. He said, as a PM, your job, as a PM, your success is on loan from an engineer. It's like very deep statement. Like I don't think I fully grokked it back then. It simply means as a PM, all you do is talk, right? You come up with plans, you define things, but you never build unless you're also an engineer, right? So if you don't have an engineer who also buys into your vision, you cannot be successful. So it's like, so those are two things that I believe in very strongly. And I'll just say this funny thing. So back in the days, like very, very early days of Facebook, it was a very engineering driven company. The only people at the company were engineers. Engineers know how to design a product. Engineers know how to build. Engineers know how to take it to the customer, right? But maybe they're not super good at taking it to the customer, not super good at designing the right product. So then they were like, so now as engineers back in very early days, they were like, how do we scale? So they said, oh, let's maybe get another person who is a little bit more outbound, who's comfortable talking and not an introvert who doesn't like to just sit behind a screen, because it was an uncomfortable job for engineers. If they have to go out, talk to customers, they enjoy this thing way more, right? So they said, let's maybe bring in a PM who can also talk to the customers, tell us what to do, and then we do it, and he takes the product to the customers. So it was like PM and Inch combo for some time. Then they were like, this PM doesn't really understand. So we still have this problem of designing. We're designing and building. Can we maybe bring a designer into the mix as well? So for the longest time, these PM teams are all about PM, Inch, and designer. These three combo. So now if you have these three, you can figure out the whole thing, right? So now talking about PMing is very much that, like figuring out what to build, for whom and why, and how do you build it, right? So now talking about Web3, maybe early in the days, right? Today, Web3 is not small. We have a number of governments, like the 150 plus countries, who are working with FATF, trying to figure out their compliance requirements for travel. So we are not in early days anymore. We have 200 million wallets out there. That means these users are already in the ecosystem. Maybe if we go back 2.5, 3 years, when the space was still small, that time it was a bit of an art, because you didn't have as much data, you didn't have as many users, you couldn't always go to the users to say, hey, what problem are you facing? You had to do somewhat of what Apple did back in the days when they released iPhone. They never asked anyone like, hey, do you want an iPhone? Do you want a camera and phone together? They didn't ask anyone. They basically pushed it out and they created a brand new market. So I think in the early days of Web3, it was to some extent like this. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter whether it's Web 2 or Web 3 or AI or something else. All of these, they are technologies, they're means to an end. They are solving a problem for the user. So those fundamentals will never change. So I think maybe early in the days of Web 3, because you didn't have as much data, you didn't have as many users, so you had to figure out what to do, for whom and why. But now you have enough users. So I personally do not see much of a difference. Like I've seen this in my last year and a half at Circle, how we build products. Of course, Web3 is a bit more about decentralization and communities and all that. So I think the way you take the products to the users is different. Your community is taking the product to the users together, right? But at the end of the day, the product is still the product. It is solving something, it's solving for a gap in the market, right? So I think starting in Web3, things were different, but now it's starting to go back to how you do typical product building, typical solving problems, typical taking it to the market. So I think it's going back to, at the end of the day, it's all about user and the pain point. That does not change. It doesn't matter whether you're building on AI or Web3, right?
Got it. So I think there is definitely some amount of maturity coming into building products here. Given that you interact with so many ecosystem builders, either on building on USDC, building outside, as well as working with large tech companies, right, who are looking to explore USDC. What are some of the most interesting problem statements or ideas that you're really excited about for the next 12 to 24 months?
Sure.
Where is the future of the space?
So I think there are ideas, and then there is the space itself, right? So I think the thing that I'm more excited about, and I do have some bias because I live and breathe compliance day in and out. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is that after a lot of hard work by all the people in the community, I think the space is starting to get a bit more legitimized, right? We saw the Indian G20 presidency when they launched this paper with IMF and FSB. That means these G20s have at least come together and said, okay, I think these are some recommendations or frameworks that we can leverage to build our own policies and laws and whatnot. So I think that part I'm definitely excited about, that this space is starting to get a bit more legalized and accepted. And no one is now saying, oh, let's see how big they become and then we'll go after them, right? Or maybe they will just die by themselves. So I don't think that's going to happen. So countries are now accepting it. As an example, Japanese government, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, UAE, UK, EU 27 countries, they all have almost figured out their stablecoin bills. Many of them, right? Stablecoin will probably be the first one that will come out. And as an example, a bunch of these other laws around BSA, ML, money laundering, terrorist financing, sanctions screening, they have been around for a long time. Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, same activity, same risk, same regulation. You are moving money. This money is going to be used for something. Today, the money moves through the traditional banking rails. Tomorrow, it's going to move from me to you directly, right? But you still get the value exchange is still happening. So why should this be treated any differently, right? So I think those are the things I'm more excited about. Beyond that, I think we are also now in a phase where moving from a speculative phase to utility phase. People are coming here, like even today, like it's funny, like last whole week I was in Delhi, and as I tell people that I work in crypto, literally hands down the first question I ask is, which token should I buy? Which token should I buy so I can make money, right? So I think people will come here for speculation, but they will stay here for utility. And there are a bunch of these utility use cases are emerging, and I'm super excited about these use cases happening on top of USDC and Circle, because we are talking to a number of customers day in and out, bunch of RWA use cases, bunch of tokenization use cases, remittance use cases, but they're all about moving money. I think tokenization will probably be the biggest use case we'll see in the next couple of years. Like everything will get tokenized, everything will be on chain. Other big benefit to that is the minute it's on chain, your market is huge. As an example, there's a company that's tokenizing real world assets, real estate properties out of Europe, but they're selling it to customers in India and China. Previously, the properties, physical property standing in Europe, you cannot expose it to those users. Like how does the paperwork even work? How does the money exchange work? No one wants to take the risk because you don't know what laws there really are, right? Maybe you convert your money to euro, you give it to these guys, but all those conversion hassles are really big as well. So I think now that it's on chain, anyone can access it, and it's sitting in their wallet as an NFT, right? So I'm super excited about those utility use cases emerging, and I'm also very excited about all the regulatory clarity that's coming up in the space. Things are getting like India, I think it was March or so, they made a bunch of exchanges, crypto exchanges, into reporting entities. That means, these exchanges need to start reporting the transactions that are happening. There's a concept of SAR filing, suspicious activity reporting, which is like if you see a bad activity happening, you have to report it to the regulators. Until now, these exchanges, even if the activity is happening, they're not required to report. But that means if I'm asking you to report, that means I accept what you're doing, right? It's not a question of, hey, is it legal or not? It's a question of, yes, you're going to do this. I need to hear about this, right? So I think those are the things I'm very excited about.
And I think then your job in regulatory and compliance become all the more important.
That's it. So I think compliance in general, the more you know about it, the easier the better mindset you will have, because you will not have to have that level of anxiety. And secondly, I think you are dealing with money. There is no two way about it. You can live you can be a Bitcoin maxi, you can be a degen. At the end of the day, for the masses, if it has to become a full-fledged mainstream game, it will have to be treated just like any money. As an example, like we talk about this all day long, the experiences in Web3 should be as simple as experiences in Web2.
Correct. Exactly.
We don't expect the user to even know that they are in decentralized world. The benefit they should see is if I'm in US and I'm sending money to my mom in India and it takes me 5 days and I pay 10% fees or 6-7% fees, and now tomorrow the money goes like in a matter of minutes. So it's like that is the value I see, right? I don't really care. This is exactly what I keep saying. Technology is a means to an end. That doesn't matter what rails are underneath, right? It will be the benefit that the user are going to see, and that's what they will be hooked on to.
100%. I think that is one of the best examples. If someone asks you today, hey, why is Web3 even relevant? Why should I build in this? Just ask them exactly, to make one transaction, sending money from here to the US to a friend, and then do it via any of the wallets and send USDC of the same, denomination from, to your parents or your, someone.
What has happened is, so today, this is the frame of reference we have, right? Takes 5 days. Tomorrow, you can send it on this technology. So here, the technology exists, but the experiences are still pretty bad, right? So it's like onboarding a user. I think I was talking to someone yesterday, and he said to create a MetaMask wallet, it's like 10 plus steps, right? So we still have to, we cannot expect a user who does not know, who should not care about the technology, to go through the technology nuances, right? So that's what we have to it has to be seamless. It has to be transparent to the users. It has to be behind the scenes. I should not even know that someone has seamlessly moved me to a much better place.
Exactly. No, I think that's a great example. I feel it's only thing in that, how do you make it compliant in this entire regulatory space? I think that bit, if people can figure out, and then I think some of these products can be even more frictionless than even Web2 products today.
That's right. That's right. I mean, technology is already here. Like I say this proudly that when I send you money, the money will move.
Yeah.
There's no blocking to money.
Yeah.
But now we have to do a bunch of things to make sure you are the right person.
Correct.
So those things are still to be done, or will be done once the regulatory clarity comes. It's kind of there in US already, but you cannot block the money.
Yeah.
You just have to enable it to move in a compliant manner.
Absolutely.
And that's my job.
Absolutely. Sunil, we spoke a lot about building products. We spoke about, what early stage builders should keep in mind, what product managers should, whether building in the Web2 space or Web3 space, keep in mind. I'd love to talk about one more aspect, which I know you've been very active in. You've been advising a couple of startups. You've been an active angel investor. And now I think with senior leaders in our ecosystem come through in our community, they are looking to give back more to the community. You've done it for a couple of years. You have some learnings over the years that you would like to share with our community, given how risky angel investment is?
Yeah, so I think angel investment, so I have done multiple startups. I may do another startup soon. I love being around founders. When I was doing my MBA back in the days from Berkeley, entrepreneurship was the thing that I focused on. So I'm all about startups. I'm all about 0 to 1. I have built several 0 to 1 products in my career. And so I love being around new people, new technologies. So even though I'm not building it, but I get my knowledge from the people who are building it. And advising people is the best way because they're already figuring it out. All you have to do is just listen. Go talk to them and listen, right? Which is the easy part. So here, I think angel investing, first of all, it's your money. So a little bit more sensitive about it. Secondly, so I think it's more of an art than science. Exactly the example that we were talking about earlier for Web3. Earlier in the days, there was not as much data. So you had to figure it out, right? So here, I mean, your guesses will be as good as my guesses because there is no real fundamental thing that we can latch onto, right? So here, I have to count on people. I have to depend on people. Can I trust this person? Does this person have high integrity? Will he do the right thing? Is he going to do the right thing by the user, right? So I think I'm investing more in like your past can show me that you have been a hustler. You are a builder. You will do the right thing when the time comes. You will not shy away. You'll not run away. Those values are way more important to me than what you're building. I mean, every startup that I have done, I had 3-4 pivots. So you will pivot. So the idea that I cannot invest in an idea because I know this is not the idea that will be the final idea that will become big or that you will latch onto. So it's more about the people. Like, can you trust this person? How well do you connect? And second thing that I look at is I want to be useful as well. It's not just about a passive investor, give you money and all that. I play a very active advisory role. I want to be helpful. Whether it's helpful about building products, taking products to market, figuring out all the trade-offs you need to make, whether they are legal, regulatory, privacy, whatever kind of trade-offs. So helping people, because this is exactly what we do day in and out at my level, because I have teams. Like I said earlier, I'm not telling teams what to do. I'm telling them I'm helping them understand the framework for how to do it. They will eventually do it. Maybe the framework was right, but the decisions were wrong. They will go in the wrong direction. We'll bring them back, right? So that's less important. What's more important is the how part. There is a saying that how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? Yeah. The mindset is way more important here. So those are the kind of things I look for. And then I see, can I help you in any way apart from just giving money, right? Yeah. So in what can I make connections? Can I guide you in what products to build, how to build them, what kind of validation to do, Can I connect you to customers that you can talk to? Other thing that has started happening, I think it's more organic. As I'm in this ecosystem and I'm talking to one company, I'm starting to see parallels. So I'm making a lot of intercompany connections as well between startups. And this is exactly what an active VC does in their portfolio of companies. One company will help the other company grow. I'm at a much smaller scale. I'm more like an individual investor, but I'm still able to make some of those connections.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. I think that's great advice for people looking to get started. Continuing on the personal front, Sunil, I think we were looking at one of your LinkedIn posts where you had mentioned one of your most favorite interview question
Right.
is asking people what are they most proud of.
Sure.
Turning the table back
Yeah.
to Sunil, what are you
Right.
most proud of over the years?
Interesting. Yeah. So, but maybe I'll give you some context in why I asked this question, right? So this question is interesting because it doesn't have any basis to it. It doesn't have any foundation. I mean, you could be proud of maybe buying a new bike.
Yeah.
You could be proud of having a kid, right? Or you could be proud of buying a new house for your parents, right? Or you could be proud of launching a product that became a unicorn, right? It could be anything.
Yeah.
So I think it does two things for me. It literally two things. One is I understand your depth. Like if you say, hey, there was a time when there were these two people, they were having a conflict and I went and resolved it.
Mhm.
Or you say, hey, there was a time when these two companies were having issues and I was the one who made the companies work together, right?
Yeah.
So it helps me see the level that you have operated at, right? At the end of the day, this is again very, very important for PMs. I mean, the thing that will take you to the next level is literally just one thing, is the amount of information you can process, amount of information you can keep in your head and make sense out of.
Nice.
This is literally the only thing. This is the other word to this is capacity. That do you have the capacity to handle more, right? What happens with a lot of, like at some of these big tech companies, IC5 is a terminal level. What that means is that you can stay at the company forever. You will not get promoted because you have opted to stay at that level. You will, depending on the work you do, depending on the impact you're having, you will get paid, you will get rewarded accordingly, right? But you're never ever going to become level 6 or a manager or what. So you can opt to do that. And the reason for that is after a while, if you're not exposed, like I don't know if I talked about this earlier. There was a time at Facebook when I was doing privacy, I had to build a roadmap for 1,000 people, 1,000 engineers. That was probably the biggest scale thing that I have done in my career. It was extremely, extremely hard. But what that does is now that you have done it once, you see how it feels, right? You know how it feels. And you can attempt that problem again. But if you have never climbed the top of Mount Everest, it's going to be an unbearable task, right? You will just not even attempt. But once you have been forced to attempt it, someone really pushed you hard that you have to do it, you just become a bigger person. You just have a bigger frame of reference, right? So that's what happens. So I think I'm now losing my chain of thought. But
Looping back to what are you most proud of?
yes. So what am I most proud of? So it was, I think, early 2020. Of course, COVID had hit. People were starting to work from home. Companies were super scared as well. And like there were these posts on LinkedIn all day long. Oh, because it was around March, April of 2020. This is around the time when kids graduate from school. They're about to start a new job in a few months in summer. So you used to see these posts like, oh, this company took back my job, or that company, or the interview has gone away, or I got rejected. I had the offer in hand and they rejected the last minute. So we started seeing this. I just put a small message on LinkedIn saying, how can I be helpful? I always have this attitude of giving back to the community. And it has come back multi-fold. I can give you hundreds of examples, not thousands, when it has come back multi-fold. So giving back to the community without having an expectation, but you still get rewarded somehow. So here I just put a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'll be happy to help if you want to talk. And I was at Meta back then. Of course, Meta is a big name. It wasn't Meta, it was Facebook back then. It became Meta in 2021. So it's like people just want to talk to you, right? If you're a PM at Facebook, people think you must have a very good career, whatever, so they want to talk to you. So I figured out Calendly. I put it on LinkedIn saying, hey, I was literally looking at the post this morning. And then I said, if you are interested, please feel free to book time. And I think 10, 15 people booked time. And I think I had by default 45-minute slot. I was like, 45 minutes should be good enough. If I'm talking to you, if I'm giving you advice, I should give you enough time, right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes is not enough. So that's what I did. And my calendar got filled up. So it was like first week. And I think the first week I said I'll talk after work, maybe from 5 to 6. But then it got filled up. So I said, okay, 5 to 7. I had young kids, 4 years old. I have twins, a boy and a girl. And so then my evenings started getting filled up. But the demand kept coming in. And I was like, so how do I now? People need help. I talked to my wife. I said, people do need help. What should we do? So she said, do whatever you can do, right? So then my weekends started getting filled up. There was a time so now I had to cut down from 45 to 30. But then because the demand kept going up, I basically had to bring it down from 30 to 15. Now I was in a place where 15 minutes wasn't enough, right? So now, like, how do I scale myself? So I had to really, this was the same problem that I had earlier, where I had gone from managing 2 products, building 2 products to 7, and then 2 more. I was like, I need to figure out a way to scale. So then I was like, maybe let me start to find patterns in what people are asking me. I'm having one-on-ones, I'm taking notes, but everything is one-on-one. But I'm seeing similar, maybe 1 or 2 questions repeating in every conversation. Can I do something to maybe write about it, or maybe do a bigger session where I invite a bunch of people on Zoom and they can all ask me whatever they want to ask, and maybe your question will get answered because someone else asked the same question, right? Yeah. So then I did that. So for like a month and a half, I used to do these 2-3 hour long Zoom calls on weekends where I had like 70 to 90 people on an average. But then by the time, so it was maybe between April of that year till July, I think I had spoken one-on-one to almost 500 plus people. So that was like a big thing that I felt I was able to do something. I don't know how many people got the benefit from it, but at least I did whatever I could. And I still have people, they will come back and say, like, I was going to talk about this later, but so my wife is a hair and makeup artist. She used to work at this tech company called Cruise Automation, where she used to run the vehicle testing department, it's an autonomous vehicle company. And so she had a client. And so my wife is a big Instagram page, big following. So this lady was there to get hair and makeup done. And as they were sitting there, she was talking to him and she asked like, hey, do you know this guy, Sunil? And my wife was like, yeah, I know him, but why? So she then keeps on going. She talked about me for 15 minutes, saying there was a time back then I reached out to a bunch of people. This was the only guy who helped me. He was willing to talk to me and he helped me and I was able to make a career jump. And then after that, my wife was like, yeah, he's my husband and he's sitting in the other room, working from home, sitting in the other room working. So the lady, but my wife was blown away, first of all, and the lady was blown away. They're like, so these are like things that come back and you have no idea what kind of goodwill you have created around yourself in the ecosystem. It'll come back. 100%. So yes, I'm super, super proud of what I did. And from there, I was like, because I saw value in myself, because the more you are advising, like there is a saying that when you teach, 2 people learn, because you have to, you first you learn, then you teach, right? 2 people learn. So I very strongly believe in it. People will come up with very, very random questions and sometimes you really have to think. Yeah. Like I was talking to some senior director yesterday and they were asking, yeah, I'm having this alignment problem with this other team. What should I do? Right? But the situations are different. So you have to think of like your coaching advice. You have to think about like what is the right thing to do in this moment, right? So now ever since like every weekends, so like I said, I still have young kids. I have now I think they're 8.5 something. And so every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, I block my 7 to 9 before my family wakes up. I spend 2 hours and I coach PM. So it's all about PM and PM coaching. And ever since I have been writing on LinkedIn as well, ever since I started, and I was like, people are getting value out of it. So I have been continuing to write on product management in general on LinkedIn.
Oh, this is amazing. I think, first of all, kudos for you to take that initiative. And second, for keeping it going, right? I think a lot of people are great at starting, but struggle to keep it going. So, that is amazing. Given that you mentioned you had more than 500 such conversations, were there common patterns of questions that came up? And if there were 3 tips that you'd like to give our listeners, especially on building careers, building resilient careers, and growing up that ladder, what would these 3 be?
Sure. Yes, I think maybe from those conversations, things that were common were probably, I think the most common one was, how do I break into PM? That is the most common question. I think PM over the last many years has become that career which is, I think, fulfilling. People find a lot of job satisfaction. And if you are a control freak, you feel like you're sitting in the middle and you have a lot of people around you, all the way from design to engineering to testing to marketing, sales, customers, and who not. And if you can handle all that. And secondly, it's a very thankless job. So do not expect to be thanked. If you can live with that mindset, I think you'll be successful. So I think on the things for how do you break into PM, how do I not get rejected in the application that I'm making? So I think here the advice has always been that never apply directly to a company, always go through somebody. People trust the people they know way more than some random person reaching out. This is exactly how VCs also operate. They never take a VC call directly. They'll always say to go through someone who is willing to stand for them, right? And third one was probably all about, I think this is again a very common one, writing good resumes, right? So here, the thing that I really, really like is there is this this pattern called SAR. I think it's SAR, situation, action, and result. So I do not care about. So let's say if you are a as an example, production manager, right? Not a production manager, or let's say test engineer. I know what a test engineer is expected to do. So I do not care about what you did. I do not care about that. What I care about is what happened because of what you did.
Right.
So don't tell me, hey, I created PDDs or PRDs or whatever.
Yeah.
Tell me, what did you launch and how's the customer better off? How did the revenue go up, right? So it's more about the numbers than about the what you did. I don't care about the what you did. I know I can read the job description. I'll know 90% of the same job title people do the same thing. You tell me how are you different, right? Apart from telling. So I think those are the 3 or 4 things that came up, breaking into writing good resumes, not getting rejected. I think you had another question as well. Like,
Yeah. I want to double down on the senior folks that came.
Sure.
Did you have some interesting conversations? You mentioned a senior director came in.
Right,
You know,
right.
you had a conversation with them last day. Was there any patterns that you were able to match? Especially what I see becoming difficult is earlier career, of course, you know, lots of challenges breaking in. But as they scale, then, you know, there are fewer
Right.
opportunities at the top. And second is around managing. So I think the first
Right.
one is definitely how do you cross the chasm when it comes to
Right.
middle to senior level?
Yeah. So I think PM is one of those roles, functions where even the people reporting to you cannot direct them. You cannot tell them to do something. It's a job of influencing. It's a job of, like, when I talk about so many functions. And I think the thing that I had talked about earlier is, like, if someone in the room does not understand the why they're doing this, they will eventually get tired, right? Because they're doing it because someone is telling them.
Sure.
And they're always, often they will try to be finding issues with why this thing is not right, versus internalizing it and fully accepting it that this is the right thing to do and I am the one driving it, right? I have full agency in it, right? So I think one is that, like, how do you influence people?
Yeah.
What do you tell people? How do you make them feel heard? How do you make sure and if I should talk about this story, just an example, recently, I won't go into the details, but someone in my cross-functional team, they were not fully bought in because I wanted to launch something, and they did not feel the agency, or they did not feel the ownership of the thing that I was launching. And hence, they were trying to throw a wrench in the mix, as you said, saying this thing is not right, this thing is not right for the market, or you should not do this, you'll have these other issues. Versus, so I think, and they were a very strong stakeholder for me. And if the stakeholder is not on the same page, I had to figure out, like, how do I get them on the same page? So I think here there are 2 things. One is you need to make people feel heard, like they had some feedback, so you have to make it feel heard. Second thing, I think this is a broader advice for PMs. Do not make it about democracy. It's not about democracy. You should always be holding the pen. Because if you are going to be too democratic, you will end up with mediocre solution. So you have to be always holding the pen. Anyways, in this case, first, I had to make the person feel heard. Secondly, I had to make them part of the problem itself. It's much harder to say my baby is ugly, but much easier to say your baby is ugly, right? But once you are in it, I cannot say I'm in it. So now here the thesis is give them the pen for some time. Let them hold the pen for some time. So when they are holding the pen, they feel that they are adding to the solution. They're not just being told to figure out the solution. It's a big lesson learned. I applied this very effectively at Facebook when I was doing this privacy effort, which really became big, blew up to like few thousand engineers in a matter of year and a half. I had to make people part of the problem,
Okay.
not just part of the solution. Like, you have to own it from inside out. So I think those, as you grow senior, those things become way more important.
Right.
I think one other advice that I'll give you, and this I think for much senior people, is that there are these, you have these superpowers. Your superpower could be execution. Your superpower could be telling stories. Your superpower could be getting people excited. Your superpower could be figuring out where to go, right? Finding opportunities. But then every superpower has a shadow. I follow this PM lead from Facebook called Nikhil Singhal. He writes a podcast called The Skip. Absolutely love it. I recommend you guys should listen as well. So he talks about 10 different superpowers and the shadows behind each of the superpower. So as an example, you might be a really good visionary, but you may struggle to execute. You might be a really good person at execution, like you are like a bulldozer, right? Just execute the hell out of it. But you don't really empathize with people along the way. So you're burning bridges and burning people, right? So I think you have to be the senior you get, because there are things as you are, let's say, getting from level 5 to 6 to 7 and all that, things that are taking you to the next level are your superpowers.
Yeah.
But as you have gotten here, things that will hold you back are the shadows of your superpowers. So you have to watch out for what the shadows are. And you have to not just watch out, you have to accept that you have these shadows and you have to be willing to work on it. It's not hard to work on it once you figure it out, because what the mindset that you generally have is, hey, I have become this because I execute really well, because I tell really good stories, I empathize and connect with the customers really well, but I'm not able to do the other thing, right? So I think, so those are the few things I'll say: influence, and this thing, shadow. And there was one more, I'm forgetting what was in the middle.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe one last section before we head into the rapid fire. I'm especially particularly intrigued because, if you back to back worked across two very large organizations, and this boils down to what you mentioned earlier on influence as well, right? So lots of tips for early stage product managers on how to break into product is what we discussed. But once they break into product, I'd love to learn more about how did your org really look like, and what are the expectations at different levels of PMA. Right? So you could take an example. If there are similarities between Meta and Circle, you could take any one of those examples. And if you could just give us some insights, you're a leader today, managing downstream. So what are the expectations from, APMs to you're today a senior director, so maybe up to directors?
Right.
What are some levels and what are the expectations?
It's a very interesting question. And I think it's maybe not true for many companies. So it doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, if you are a APM going into a company, or you're going as a VP into a company, the functional skills of a PM are exactly the same. You have to be able to figure out who the customer is, what's the pain point, how do you solve it, what are the trade-offs, how do you prioritize, how do you execute, what are the metrics. Those things never change. So the thing that I observed at Facebook in particular was that doesn't matter what level you're coming in at. Doesn't matter. Interview is exactly the same. Interview is exactly the same. Do you know how to do this job before you come in as a VP and start dictating how to do the job, right? Because if you don't know how to do the job, how are you going to empathize with the people on the ground who are doing the job? So I think this is one thing. And now talking about the expectation. So first, you have to nail the functional skill of a PM. How do you do the basics, users, pain points, solutions, trade-offs, prioritization, and all that. Second is coming from leveling, right? So there are several levels. You can call them whatever. You can call them level 3, 4, 5. You can call them APM, APM, PM, senior PM, lead PM, principal PM, whatever, right? It does not matter what title you put. Like Facebook as an example, I think Google was similar until some time. I don't know if they've changed it now. Like internally at Facebook, you did not know if you're a level 5 or a level 6 or a level 7. Because we did not want people's titles coming in the way of execution. Let's say if you're a level 7, which is extremely senior PM at Facebook, and I'm a level 5, I may be intimidated because you're a much senior PM sitting next to me and you may have a different point of view. But when I don't know what your level is, I don't care what your level is, right?
Yeah.
You have a point of view, I have a point of view, and let the best point of view win, right? So at level, the junior most level, you'll probably be handed a feature to work on, right? And this is also, I'll talk about how when you get promoted, right? Or when we, not promoted, but when we hire people, how we level them, right? What level is the right level? So at the junior most level, you're probably handling a feature.
Yeah.
At the next level, you're probably handling a small product.
Yeah.
Next level, you're probably handling two products. Next level, you're probably handling a portfolio of products. Then you're handling an area of products, right? So I think the biggest difference is when you are at the lowest level, you have to think about because you're at the feature level, you have to think about bigger trade-offs like privacy or compliance or policy or comms or legal go-to-market. Because there's a senior person who owns that area of the product who will think about those trade-offs. So I think at Facebook, we used to say that a level 5 is probably a level 3, 4, and 5 are part of the same team, and they are peer PMs managing two different products, but there are some overlap between them. So they have to work together. At level 6, you start to work between orgs. Between two different pillars within the same org, but you have different pillars. So you're influencing each other's roadmaps because things have to connect eventually, right? The ultimate goal, that North Star that you're going after, things have to connect to get there. At level 7, you're operating between two org. So let's say an org could be Facebook is an org, WhatsApp is an org, Instagram is an org, Messenger is an org, ARVR is an org, right? So at level 7, you're operating between orgs. So you're influencing each of the roadmap. At level 8, you're literally between companies. You're between Facebook and Google or Facebook and Apple. So you are influencing other companies' roadmap.
Yeah.
So I think the senior you get, because then you'll consider that the kind of trade-offs you have to consider at every level are going to be different. So now what happens is this. This is the best part. So in an interview, question comes up and you tell me how you respond to it, how you approach the problem. The kind of trade-offs you talk about will depend on the kind of exposure you have had.
Yeah.
If you have never seen this level of exposure, it will be hard for you to crisply talk about those trade-offs.
Yeah.
I will know what level of experience you have had. You can tell me, hey, I was in level 9. I don't care. And I'll tell you this other funny story. Facebook, I interviewed hundreds of people. Never once did I ever look at the resume of the person before I interviewed them.
Oh.
They don't even care to look at the resume afterwards, because resume does not matter. What matters is, do you know the job that you're being hired for?
Sure.
And like I said before, it doesn't matter what level you're coming in at. Leveling will come later, right? Doesn't matter where we'll slot you in. Do you know the job or not?
Very
So,
interesting.
like very, very different mindset.
Yeah.
And like very bottoms up culture. And like I said before, no permissionless, like we are not going to give you the permission to do something, because I don't want to be the one responsible for telling you what to do.
Yeah.
I want you to be the one responsible for bottoms up culture and owning it from deep down, saying, hey, I want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go build the case, not you telling me what to do. Because if you fail, you will easily point finger to me. So this is why you never get a yes or no. All you get is feedback. All you get is, hey, did you consider this? Because I'm senior and reporting to, or you're presenting to me, I can tell you, hey, maybe between these two orgs, there is this other thing happening as well. Have you considered that trade-off? Because you could be impacting that metric over there, because you just don't have the visibility, but I may have that visibility,
Right.
because I'm slightly senior to you, right? So that's how it goes.
Awesome, Sunil. We are here in the last section, and this is one of my most favorite. It is the rapid fire round.
Okay.
Whatever the first answer that comes to your mind, you can go as candid as you want to go. First up, what is the last app you use on your phone today, and what is your screen time looking like?
Last app. I think probably not one. I think I go back and forth between WhatsApp, maybe Telegram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and maybe those 3. I think I spend at least 50, 60, 70% of my time between those messaging apps. And yeah.
What does the average screen time look like?
It's actually pretty high.
Okay.
It's unfortunate. It's pretty high. I think I'll probably say it's 70%, north of 70%.
70% of your day?
70% of my day.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I know. I mean, all of us are probably in the same boat, but that's interesting. But all productivity geeks, Sunil, what is the routine that you're most religious about
Right.
maintaining? And if you have some productivity hacks for all of us.
Maybe I'll say 2. One is, which I very strongly believe in, it has made me successful several times. It's about fill your time with things that matter. It's a big one. I'll talk about this in a second more. So, but the other hack that I have been very religious about is working out. At least for the last 7 years, I work out 3-4 times a week. I work out at 5 in the morning. So it basically forces me to get up early, also forces me to sleep early. And I start my day early. So before my family wakes up, I have gotten up. I have maybe done 10 minutes of meditation. I have worked out. Once in a while, I do yoga. And I think I feel very strong that the days I work out in the morning, there are some days that I'm not able to go, but the days I work out in the morning are my best days. Like through the day are my best days. Like there was a time I used to catch myself when we were still working in offices. Now we are fully remote. I used to catch myself that every meeting that I'm having, I'm telling people about, hey, I worked out in the morning and how good I feel.
Yeah.
So it's like I just proactively, because I just felt good, because you are watching what you eat. You just have high energy. You're just happy because one big part of your job or day is already taken care of early in the morning. And you just feel good. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
But talking about the other one, filling time with things that matter, I learned this at Facebook. There's a CTO at Facebook, Andrew Bosworth. He had written a post about this. It simply means that you can do a lot of things in your day. There are a lot of people around you who are watching what you do, where you're spending your time. And what happens is there are certain things. Of course, you have to be aware of what things will lead to what impact. And if you fill your time, majority of your time, with high impact things, I'll talk about this analogy in a second as well. If you fill your time with things that you think are high impact, people around you will also start spending more time on those things, because they will notice that you are spending more time there. And if they trust you, or you have influenced them enough, they think these might be the right things for us to do. So this is the way to control how people spend their time without telling them how to spend their time. So there is an analogy in prioritization, which I'm sure many of you guys have heard, which is about when you are trying to figure out what to do. First, let's say you are on the beach and you are sitting with a big bucket. First, what you do is fill your bucket with the biggest rocks out there, right? Then you fill up your bucket with the smaller, so maybe medium-sized rocks, and they will find their way through the big rocks, and they will eventually fill up the bucket. And then there's still gap between big rocks and medium rocks. That's when you fill up a bunch of sand. Now think about this. If you followed the reverse of this and you filled up the bucket with a bunch of sand in the beginning, right? Bucket is full. It's super hard now to fill up big rocks or small or medium rocks. Your bucket is still full. You still have the same 24 hours in a day. You're going to spend your time on things that maybe do not matter or will have a small impact, right? Versus you spend your time with a one big rock versus 10 small rocks. I would rather take one big rock any day, every day.
Wow, okay, no, that is awesome. And I'm already thinking in my head, where am I spending time? So thanks for that. So you mentioned you're deep into fitness, at least for the last 7 years, been religiously doing that.
Yes.
Do you have a guilty pleasure when it comes to food?
Yes. I love Indian food. Even I have been in US for almost 20 years now, little over 20 years now. I think chole bhature is probably my favorite all time. Yeah. And my son as well. He loves. So we basically both eat chole bhature together.
Do you have a favorite restaurant in the Bay where you head to?
So Fremont, where I live, there are like tons of Indian restaurants. Yeah. There's a new place called Veg and Chaat where I go pretty frequently. And there's another place called Pakwan, which is like a Pakistani joint.
Yeah.
I love those two places. So they're like my Friday. Yeah.
Well, I'll probably check it out when I'm there next. So back in if there was one person in history that you could grab dinner with, who would that person be, and why?
Probably Steve Jobs. I think he changed the game for how we all behave. Right? He brought design. He created a product that created this aspect of beautiful designs, product designs all around. I think he's the reason why we are talking about Web3 today, right? Yeah.
Sunil, you mentioned you wanted to grab dinner with Steve Jobs. Yeah. If I were to ask you in your personal life, who would that one person that you really look up to?
I think it'll be my dad. I feel very proud to say that I'm the person, or my dad is the person who made me today. The values that he gave me, simple living, big thinking, even though it's not simple living anymore, because my wife is a hair and makeup artist on Instagram, and we have like new stuff coming to the house all the time. It feels like we have it's a house full of fashion stuff. And I literally have an Amazon truck parked outside my house all day long because he's delivering stuff literally every day. So I think it'll be my dad. I feel like when I was going to US back in the days, he literally, all his life savings, he just gave it to me to go study, right? And he sacrificed a lot. So I think a lot of what I am today goes back to my dad.
Oh, that's super inspirational. So you probably come across lots of similar set of questions, like the next one that I'm going to ask you. But I'd love to know, you started your career way back in the day. What was if you remember, what is the largest difference between your first role and what you're doing today?
Right. So my first role was an engineer at Infosys, and then I got my master's, and then I continued as an engineer, and I hated that job. I was a lousy engineer. There were bugs flying all around, and I was like, how do I get out of it? So I got to a point where I was like, I cannot continue in this field for too long. And that's when I got exposed to product management. And then I got my MBA. So now I had to figure out like, how do I switch? Because I don't know much about product management is still slightly new. Yeah. So I basically, my journey from engineering into product was through an MBA.
That's interesting. If you were to summarize this entire career in one word, what would you say your career looked like?
I mean, today, very satisfying and very fulfilling. I'm very happy with how my career has unfolded. And second, I think I'm super excited about Web3 in general, building products users, user pain points is the thing that I care about all day, every day. And that's probably the most fundamental thing about building products.
Nice. Talking about product management, I think product management is a rather stressful job.
Right.
Have you found some way to unwind or deal with stressful situations?
Yeah, so I think there is never an easy way to deal with stressful situation. I think working out definitely is one way that you can disconnect and at least give yourself an hour where you're not thinking about anything because you are so deep into working out. I'm into this thing called CrossFit. Then I think meditation once in a while can definitely help as well. And lastly, I think a glass of wine can help anytime.
Nice. 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 Last one, but Sunil, if you weren't doing product management today, what would you be doing?
I think I would be running a startup. Yeah.
Back to
But I think
the grind.
it'll be back to because I'm good at products. I think it'll be some aspect of owning products in a startup.
Yeah. So back to the 0 to 1, you
Back to the
enjoy
0 to 1,
that
yeah.
phase.
Yeah.
Any
This is why I'm closer to the early stage founders, why angel investing, advising companies, meeting with people who are in product,
Yeah.
coaching them to be better.
Are there some spaces that you're really excited about? Any particular ideas that if you were, is there something running at the back of your mind already?
I think it'll be something around tokenization, utility related ideas,
Got it.
to make the space more meaningful for the common masses.
Thanks so much, Sunil. I think we could go on forever, and there's so many insights that we'd love to jam today. But it's been a very, very insightful discussion over the past hour and a half.
It was fun. It was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Exciting week lined up for you post this as well, and we're hoping to catch you and follow your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is awesome. Yeah.